Workplace can be positively dangerous. 295 people were killed at work last year. The organisation, which is supposed to protect us in the workplace, is the Health and Safety Executive. But an investigation to which our business correspondent Paul Mason has had access suggests a sharp decline in workplace inspections.
300 dead and 30,000 seriously injured. That's the price the British workforce pays each year on average just for clocking on. Accidents like the one at Chorus in Port Talbot last year, where 3 men died, have pushed the death rate upwards recently. What's going down is the number of health and safety inspections. According to a report from Unison and the Centre for Corporate Accountability, the number of inspections carried out by the Health and Safety Executive has fallen by 41% over the last 5 years. On average, a registered workplace will be visited once every 20 years. 80% of major injuries to workers are still not being investigated. Only 11% of major injuries resulted in prosecution. And there are massive variations in the HSE's performance in different regions and industries.
This is the first ever audit of the enforcement activities of the Health and Safety Executive. It shows that the level of investigation has increased, that's a positive thing, but negatively it shows that there has been a decrease in the level of preventative inspections. And that's a real problem because unless Health and Safety Executive inspectors can go to workplaces and identify failures before the death and major injury takes place, the death or major injury may take place in the future.
The HSE disputes some of the figures in the CCA's report, but it does accept the basic picture that inspections like this one at a London building site have fallen. Investigations have doubled since a select committee of MPs told the executive to get tough, but employers are worried about the resulting trade-off.
All responsible employers are very much in favour of proper enforcement to make sure that the standards that they uphold are actually pursued by the rest of the business community. But fundamentally, businesses that we talk to say that they would much rather see inspectors coming in and offering advice to prevent employers finding themselves in a situation where an accident happens, rather than the inspectors coming after the event and having to enforce prosecutions.
For Simon Jones, it's too late. He was killed in 1998 on his first day at work in Shoreham Docks. The workplace hadn't been inspected for 4 years. The employer, Euromin, was fined £50,000 for breaches of safety regulations, but the company and its boss, James Martell, were acquitted of charges of manslaughter. Simon's mother waged a 3-year legal battle to bring the case to court and is scathing about the HSE's record on the case.
The big problem appears to be that the HSE don't like spending money on prosecutions. They are so grossly under-resourced that money that goes on prosecutions has to be taken away from inspections or investigations or something else. They have a very small pot of money that they have to divide up among all of the things that they do. Consequently, nothing gets done well.
Louise Christian was the solicitor in the Simon Jones case and also represented victims of the Ladbroke Grove rail crash. She believes the conclusions of the Cullen inquiry into that disaster have big implications for the HSE's more general role.
The HSE has a conflict of interest in that it inspects premises and railways and can serve enforcement notices to stop unsafe practices, but that it also investigates to see what's happened. Lord Cullen said that should stop in relation to the railways. There should be an independent investigation body. But in relation to deaths at work, factories, work premises throughout the country, the HSE will continue to have this conflict of interest.
The Cullen report placed new demands on the HSE with regard to railways. Newsnight has learned that the executive's current budget will not cover those demands and it's been asking the government for more. But who does it ask? The executive's been shunted between 3 different ministries in the past 2 years, and after the excitement of the last move during the Stephen Byers reshuffle, the government let 3 months go by without appointing a named Minister for Health and Safety. On top of all this, ministers are grappling with the question of corporate manslaughter. Labour promised legislation to specifically outlaw corporate killing 5 years ago, but it's facing opposition from employers.
Our view is that the case is not proven for this. Again, there is an existing body of law, mainly through the Health and Safety at Work Act, which allows for companies to be prosecuted, companies to be fined and fined significantly for breaches of health and safety requirements, particularly where there are serious accidents. I think the emphasis again is on proper enforcement, upon cases being brought against companies where there is a strong body of evidence that those companies have in some way been negligent. What we don't necessarily see as the case is the need for a new offence of corporate killing.
For Anne Jones, the new law can't come too soon. She's still campaigning to make Britain's health and safety laws more effective. And after 4 years of dealing with the HSE, this is what she thinks of it.
With the exception of the individual health and safety inspector, obstructive, secretive, making artificial excuses, misinformation, time-consuming, very difficult to get at the person that you want to get at, and all the time the legal department hides behind everybody else, and yet they seem to wield enormous power.
It was an HSE investigation that eventually punished the company where Simon Jones was killed. More frequent inspection might have saved his life.
Well, we're joined now from our studio in Leeds by Justin McCracken, who's the Deputy Head of the Health and Safety Commission. Mr. McCracken, a simple question. Would more workplace inspections make the workplace safer?
Well, of course, more resource for any regulator will help them to do their job better.
In that case, why have you cut them?
We have not cut the total amount of contact that we have with people whom we regulate. It's important to see the whole thing in perspective. We've reduced the amount of inspections we do in order to be able to do more enforcement and to have other contacts with people.
But you've just conceded that more inspections would make for a safer workplace.
More inspections would make for a safer workplace, more investigations would make for a safer workplace. What our job is to use the resource that we've got in the most effective way to try to make improvements in health and safety.
If safety comes first, why is it a case of either or?
Inevitably, we have limited resources. As anybody running any enterprise has more things that they would like to do than they've got resources to do. And so what we have to do is to try to get the balance between the different types of activity so that we effect the maximum improvement. And indeed, I think your trailer earlier showed just what conflicting views there are between people with different aspects, different views on the health and safety issues. So some want more inspections, some want more investigations.
But to be clear about this, you would like to carry out more inspections, but you haven't got the resources to do so.
Any regulator would like more resources to be able to do more inspections, in my case, to be able to do more investigations, and very importantly, to be able to give more advice to people. Because really, the main thing we've got to do is make sure that those who are employers and employees understand what they need to do to make workplaces safe. And that is how the greatest improvements will be made.
But when 80% of workplace injuries aren't even investigated, something's gone pretty wrong, hasn't it?
No, I don't think that's right. We investigate the most serious workplace injuries, and we have very clear criteria to make sure that we do that consistently across different industries and across the country. And as I say, what we have to do is look at the most serious ones so that we can draw the lessons, and where necessary, that we can actually hold people to account where they've broken the law.
So why are 80% of them not investigated?
Because to investigate all of them would require an absolute army of inspectors, and I really don't think that would be practical if one looks at the amount of resource that would be needed and the impact, then the cost that would be either to the taxpayer or in terms of other things not being done.
But these are serious injuries. 80% of serious injuries not investigated.
The most serious injuries are investigated, and as I say, the balance which we have to strike is how we can make the biggest improvements with the resource that we have got.
Wouldn't a dispassionate observer conclude from the fact that we have no new law on corporate manslaughter that you, by your own admission just now, say you haven't got the resources to do the job you would like to be able to do, and from the fact that for 3 months there wasn't even a named minister in charge of workplace safety, that this is simply something which doesn't have a great deal of priority as far as this government's concerned?
Well, I don't think that one can judge the priority which is put on health and safety by what might have happened during a reshuffle. But to be honest, that's a question that I think you really need to be addressing to a politician rather than to a civil servant like myself.
Well, I'll explain for the benefit of the audience that we did invite the minister responsible now, finally got the job to come on tonight, Nick Brown, but he's unfortunately decided he didn't want to talk about it. But you're really saying that it made no difference to how you did your job, the fact you had no minister in charge of you?
I think if we didn't have a minister in charge of us for a long period, that clearly would be a big problem for us. But we do have a 10-year strategy that we've agreed with the Commission and indeed with our former sponsoring minister, and we've got clear targets in that we're trying to achieve. And the absence of direction for a short period, I don't believe was a significant issue for us.
Mr. O'Cracken, thank you very much for joining us. Thanks.